Okay, good evening, everybody. Hello, hello. And it is time for another chapter out of the 12th planet. And this chapter is actually called the 12th planet. I believe we're on 6. Yeah, chapter 6. So it says we're 40% through the book before we start the chapter. So, yeah, doing pretty good. I'm going to cut that down a little bit. There we go. Um, Okay. Everything's looking good. My sound is there. All right. Sit back here and start reading, shall I? Okay. The 12th planet. The suggestion that Earth was visited by intelligent beings from elsewhere postulates the existence of another celestial body upon which intelligent beings established a civilization more advanced than ours. Speculation regarding the possibility of Earth visitation by intelligent beings from elsewhere has centered in the past on such planets as Mars or Venus as their place of origin. However, now that it is virtually certain that these two planetary neighbors of Earth have neither intelligent life nor an advanced civilization upon them, those who believe in such Earth visitations look to other galaxies and to distant stars as the home of such extraterrestrial astronauts. Which I don't remember exactly whose theory it is. This is an aside, of course. I read just after I read Chariots of the Gods, I read someone else's theory, and I have the book somewhere. I just don't remember the author's name off the top of my head. But his theory was that an advanced civilization did come here, but they were not so advanced that they could just jet here in their spaceship and, you know, probe a few people and then jet home. They actually had come here on a generational ship, and one of the moons of Mars, I think it's Mars, could be Jupiter. That I'm mixing them up, but I think it's Mars. One of them is their spaceship, and the other is one of their pods they used for supply, and that they had dropped off several on the way here, and so on and so forth. That was the theory of that, which is interesting to me, because you know it's just an interesting theory, different from his. Um, but they all fascinate me. Anyway, getting back to it. Uh, Okay, the advantage of such suggestions is that while they cannot be proved, they cannot be disproved either. The disadvantage is that these suggested homes are fantastically distant from Earth, requiring years upon years of travel at the speed of light. The authors of such suggestions therefore postulate one-way trips to Earth, a team of astronauts on a no-return mission, or perhaps a spaceship lost and out of control crash landing upon Earth. This is definitely not the Sumerian notion of the heavenly abode of the gods. The Sumerians accepted the existence of such a heavenly abode, a pure place, a primeval abode. While Enlil, Enki, and Ninhursag went to earth and made their home upon it, their father Anu remained in the heavenly abode as its ruler. Not only occasionally not only occasional references in various texts, but also detailed god lists actually named 21 divine couples of the dynasty that preceded Anu on the throne of the pure place. Anu himself reigned over a court of great splendor and extent. As Gilgamesh reported, and the book of Ezekiel confirmed, it was a place with an artificial garden sculpted wholly of semi precious stones. There, there Anu resided with his official consort Antu and 6 concubines, 80 offspring of which 14 were by Antu, one prime minister, 3 commanders in charge of the mills, rocket ships, 2 commanders of the weapons, 2 great masters of written knowledge, 1 minister of the purse, 2 chief justices, 2 who with sound impress, that's in quotes, and 2 chief scribes with 5 assistant scribes. Mesopotamian texts refer frequently to the magnificence of the abode of Anu and the gods and weapons that guarded its gateway. The tale of Adapa reports that the god Enki, having provided Adapa with a Shem, quote, made him take the road to heaven, and to heaven he went up. When he had ascended to heaven, he approached the gate of Anu. Tammuz, the Gizida, were standing guard at the gate of Anu, end quote. And I'm actually going to stop real quick. I'm not even going to put it on Be Right Back screen. I just forgot my glass of water in the other room. So I will be back in just a second. Okay, back. Cannot read without my glass of water. Okay. Guarded by the divine weapons Shar-Ur, royal hunter, and Shar-Gaz, royal killer, the throne room of Anu was the place of the assembly of the gods. On such occasions, a strict protocol governed the order of entering and seating. Quote, Enlil enters the throne room of Ami, seats himself at the place of the right tiara, on the right of Anu. Ea enters the throne room of Anu, seats himself at the place of the sacred tiara, on the left of Anu. End quote. The gods of heaven and earth of the ancient Near East not only originated in the heavens, but could also return to the heavenly abode. Anu occasionally came down to earth on state visits. Ishtar went up to Anu at least twice. Enlil's center in Nippur was equipped as a bond heaven earth, in quotes again. Shamash was in charge of the eagles and the launching place of the rocket ships. Gilgamesh went up to the place of eternity and returned to Uruk. Adapa, too, made the trip and came back to tell about it. So did the biblical king of Tyre. Or Tyre. Some people I've heard say Tyre. A number of Mesopotamian texts deal with the Apkallu, an Akkadian term. Let's see. Akkadian term from the Sumerian Abgal. I'm actually going to pause there because I'm getting ready to go into an ad. So, there you go. Oh.
I aim to misbehave.
You aim to misbehave. It says I'm going into an ad, but I don't see that it's started yet. I've got my phone here so I can watch that, and it's not coming up. So I will just continue. If there's not going to be an ad, then all right. A number of Mesopotamian texts deal with the Apkallu, an Akkadian term stemming from the Sumerian Abgal, great one who leads, or master who points the way. A study by Gustav Gutterbach, Die historische Tradition und ihre literarische Gestaltung bei Babylonier and Hethiten, I think is how, ascertained that these were the birdmen depicted as the eagles that we have already shown. And now I do see that we're in an ad, so we'll stop. It looks like it's going to be ending pretty quickly, though, so. So a few people didn't get to hear me butcher that German book title, but that's okay. All right. It says we're back. Maybe? But I see on my phone there's still an ad going. Ad 3 of 3. Why are there 3 ads? Okay. All right. Well, it says we're back, so here we go. So I butchered the German title. The text that spoke of their feats said of one that he, quote, brought down Inanna from heaven to the Eanna temple, made her descend, end quote. This and other references indicate that these Apkallu were the pilots of the spaceships of the Nephilim. Two-way travel was not only possible, but actually contemplated to begin with. For we are told that having decided to establish in Sumer, the gateway of the gods, Babili, the leader of the gods explained, quote, when to the primeval source for assembly you shall ascend, there shall be a rest place for the night to receive you all. When from the heavens for assembly you shall descend, there shall be a rest place for the night to receive you all. End quote. Realizing that such two-way travel between Earth and the heavenly abode was both contemplated and practiced, the people of Sumer did not exile their gods to distant galaxies. The abode of the gods, their legacy discloses, was within our own solar system. We have seen Shamash in his official uniform as commander of the Eagles. On each of his wrists he wears a watch-like object held in place by a metal clasp. Other depictions of the eagles reveal that all the important ones wore such objects. Whether they were merely decorative or served a useful purpose, we do not know. But all scholars are agreed that the objects represented rosettes, a circular cluster of petals radiating from a central point. The rosette was the most common decorative temple symbol throughout the ancient lands, prevalent in Mesopotamia, Western Asia, Anatolia, Cyprus, Crete, and Greece. It is the accepted view that the rosette as a temple symbol was an outgrowth or stylization of a celestial phenomena, a sun encircled by its satellites. That the ancient astronauts wore this symbol on their wrists adds credence to this view. Okay, and we do have a picture of the rosette and a little bit of other stuff below it, so I'll show you that here real quick. So here we have the rosette, and just out of curiosity, I know he's going to mention this. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. What do you know? There are 12 petals around the sun. Okay, moving back to our read screen. Oh, we've got 3 pictures on the next page. So, an Assyrian depiction of the galaxy of Ami in the heavenly abode confirms ancient familiarity with the celestial system such as our sun and its planets. The gateway is flanked by 2 eagles, indicating that their services are needed to reach the heavenly abode. The winged globe, where's the winged globe? Oh, okay, so I see it. The supreme divine emblem marks the gateway. It is flanked by the celestial symbols of the number 7 and the crescent, representing, we believe, Ami, flanked by Enlil and Enki. So I'll go ahead and show you that one, and then we'll read. So the eagles, the winged globe, and this is the gateway. Okay. Where are the celestial bodies represented by these symbols? Where is the heavenly abode? The ancient artist answers with yet another depiction, that of a large celestial deity extending its rays to 11 smaller celestial bodies. Encircling it, it is a representation of a sun orbited by 11 planets. And that is this part. Okay? That this was not an isolated representation can be shown by reproducing other depictions on the cylinder seals, like this one from the Berlin Museum of the Ancient Near East. And there's a little bit more. So, when the central god or celestial body in the Berlin seal is enlarged, we can see that it depicts a large ray-emitting star surrounded by 11 heavenly bodies or planets. So here's the seal and the enlarged deity with its orbiting planets. Okay, these in turn rest on a chain of 24 smaller globes. Is it only a coincidence that the number of all the moons or satellites of the planets in our solar system, astronomers exclude those of 10 miles or less in diameter, is also exactly 24? I don't know if that's still true. Remember, he was writing this back in the 70s. I don't know if any more have been discovered since then or what's the deal there. So for the time being, I'll take his word for it. Sorry. Now there is, of course, a catch to claiming that these depictions of a sun and 11 planets represent our solar system, for our scholars tell us that the planetary system of which Earth is a part comprises Sun, Earth, and Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. This adds up to the Sun and only 10 planets when the Moon is counted as one. But that is not what the Sumerians said. They claimed that our system was made up of the Sun and 11 planets, counting the Moon, and held steadfastly to the opinion that in addition to the planets known to us today, there has been a 12th member of the solar system, the home planet of the Nephilim. We shall call it the 12th planet. Before we check the accuracy of the Sumerian information, let us review the history of our own knowledge of Earth and the heavens around it. We know today that beyond the giant planets Jupiter and Saturn, at distances insignificant in terms of the universe, but immense in human terms, two more major planets, Uranus and Neptune, and a third small one, Pluto, belong to our solar system, but such knowledge is quite recent. Uranus was discovered through the use of improved telescopes in 1781. And nowadays they say Pluto isn't a planet. Accept that or not, that's what they're saying, unless that's changed again. After observing it for some 50 years, some astronomers reached the conclusion that its orbit revealed the influence of yet another planet. Guided by such mathematical calculations, the missing planet, named Neptune, was pinpointed by astronomers in 1846. Then, by the end of the 19th century, it became evident that Neptune itself was being subjected to unknown gravitational pull. Was there yet another planet in our solar system? The puzzle was solved in 1930 with the observation and location of Pluto. Up to 1780 then, and for centuries before that, people believed there were 7 members of our solar system: Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Earth was not counted as a planet because it was believed that these other celestial bodies circled Earth, the most important celestial body created by God, with God's most important creation, man, upon it. Our textbooks generally credit Nicholas Copernicus with the discovery that Earth is only one of the 7 planets in a heliocentric, sun-centered system. Fearing the wrath of the Christian Church for challenging Earth's central position, Copernicus published his study De Revolutionibus Orbium Coelestium only when on his deathbed in 1543. Spurred to re-examine centuries-old astronomical concepts primarily by the navigational needs of the Age of Discovery and by the findings by Columbus in 1492, Magellan in 1520, and others that Earth was not flat but spherical, Copernicus depended on mathematical calculations and searched for the answers in ancient writings. One of the few churchmen who supported Copernicus, Cardinal Schönberg, wrote to him in 1536. Sorry, that number threw me off. Quote, I have learned that you know not only the groundwork of the ancient mathematical doctrines, but that you have created a new theory, according to which the earth is in motion and it is the sun which occupies the fundamental and therefore the cardinal position. End quote. The concepts then held were based on Greek and Roman traditions that earth, which was flat, was vaulted over by the distant heavens in which the stars were fixed. Yeah, still that number keeps popping back to catching my eye again. Because, completely off the subject, I've always been a huge fan of the original Highlander movie, and that's a significant year in the beginning of the movie. So it always stands out to me when I see it. Anyway, against the star-studded heavens, the planets, from the Greek word for wanderer, moved around Earth. There were thus 7 celestial bodies from which the 7 days of the week and their names originated. The Sun, Sunday, Moon, Monday, Mars, Mardi, Mercury, Mercredi. So he's mixing. Is that French? Jupiter, Jeudi, Venus, Vendredi, and Saturn, Saturday. I don't know why he's mixing the languages, but whatever. Okay. These astronomical notions stemmed from the works and codifications of Ptolemy, an astronomer in the city of Alexandria, Egypt, in the 2nd century AD. And we have a picture. His definite findings were the sun, moon, and 5 planets moved in circles around Earth. Ptolemaic astronomy predominated for more than 1,300 years until Copernicus put the sun in the center. Okay, so here is the illustration of Ptolemaic astronomy. So here we have La Bovida del Cielo, Mar, Terra, Mar, Mundo Inferior. Okay, so I guess this is the flat Earth, the habitable Earth, and then the part that's sticking out underneath, floating in space, and then the vault of heaven. Okay, while some have called Copernicus the father of modern astronomy, others view him more as a researcher and reconstructor of earlier ideas. The fact is that he pored over the writings of Greek astronomers who preceded Ptolemy, such as Hipparchus and Aristarchus of Samos. The latter suggested in the 3rd century BC that the motions of the heavenly bodies could better be explained if the sun and not Earth were assumed to be in the center. In fact, 2,000 years before Copernicus, Greek astronomers listed the planets in their correct order from the sun, acknowledging thereby that the sun, not Earth, was the solar system's focal point. The heliocentric concept was only rediscovered by Copernicus, and the interesting fact is that astronomers knew more in 500 BC than in AD 500 and 1500. Indeed, scholars are now hard put to explain why first the later Greeks and then the Romans assumed that Earth was flat, rising above a layer of murky waters below which there lay Hades or hell, when some of the evidence left by Greek astronomers from earlier times indicated that they knew otherwise. Hipparchus, who lived in Asia Minor in the 2nd century BC, discussed, quote, the displacement of the solstitial and equinoctial sign, end quote. Okay. The phenomena now called precession of the equinoxes, but the phenomenon can be explained only in terms of a spherical astronomy, whereby Earth is surrounded by the other celestial bodies as a sphere within a spherical universe. Did Hipparchus then know that Earth was a globe, and did he make his calculations in terms of a spherical astronomy? Equally important is yet another question. The phenomenon of the precession could be observed by relating the arrival of spring to the sun's position, as seen from Earth, in a given zodiacal constellation, but the shift from one zodiacal house to another requires 2160 years. Hipparchus certainly could not have lived long enough to make the astronomical observation. Where then did he obtain his information? Eodoxus of Cnidus, another Greek mathematician and astronomer who lived in Asia Minor 2 centuries before Hipparchus, designed a celestial sphere, a copy of which was set up in Rome as a statue of Atlas supporting the world. The designs on the sphere represent the zodiacal constellations. But if Eodoxus conceived the heavens as a sphere, where in relation to the heavens was Earth? Did he think that the celestial globe rested on a flat Earth, a most awkward arrangement, or did he know of a spherical Earth enveloped by a celestial sphere? The works of Eodoxus, lost in their originals, have come down to us thanks to the poems of Aratus, who in the 3rd century BC translated the facts put forth by the astronomer into poetic language. In this poem, which must have been familiar to St. Paul, who quoted from it, the constellations are described in great detail, drawn all around, quote unquote, and their grouping and naming is ascribed to a very remote prior age. Quote, some men of yore a nomenclature thought of and devised and appropriate forms found, end quote. And we actually have a picture of Atlantis or Atlas holding the globe. But there's another picture, so I'll wait and I'll show you them at the same time. Who were the men of yore to whom Eodoxus attributed the designation of the constellations? Based on certain clues in the poem, modern astronomers believe that the Greek verses described the heavens as they were observed in Mesopotamia circa 2200 BC. The fact that both Hipparchus and Eodoxus lived in Asia Minor raises the probability that they drew their knowledge from Hittite sources. Perhaps they even visited the Hittite capital and viewed the divine procession carved on the rocks there. For among the marching gods, 2 bull men hold up a globe, a sight that might well have inspired Eodoxus to sculpt an Atlas and the celestial sphere. Were the earlier Greek astronomers living in Asia Minor better informed than their successors because they could draw on Mesopotamian sources? Okay, let me show you these 2 pictures before we go on. So here we have Atlas holding up the globe with all the constellations on it. And then here we have, I'm assuming this is the procession that he's referring to. And this is, I thought he said 2 bulls holding up a globe. Is that supposed to be 2 bulls standing on their hind feet? I'm not sure. But moving on. Hipparchus, in fact, confirmed in his writings that his studies were based on knowledge accumulated and verified over many millennia. He named as his mentors Babylonian astronomers of Erech, Borsippa, and Babylon, end quote. Geminus of Rhodes named the Chaldeans, the ancient Babylonians, as the discoverers of the exact motions of the moon. The historian Diodorus Siculus, writing in the 1st century BC, confirmed the exactness of Mesopotamian astrology. He stated that, quote, "The Chaldeans named the planets. In the center of their system was the sun, the greatest light of which the planets were offspring, reflecting the sun's position and shine," end quote. The acknowledged source of Greek astronomical knowledge was then Chaldea. Invariably, those earlier Chaldeans possessed greater and more accurate knowledge than the peoples that followed them. For generations throughout the ancient world, the name Chaldean was synonymous with stargazers, astronomers. Abraham, who came out of quote-unquote Ur of the Chaldeans, was told by God to gaze at the stars when the future Hebrew generations were discussed. Indeed, the Old Testament was replete with astronomical information. Joseph compared himself and his brothers to 12 celestial bodies, and the patriarch Jacob blessed his 12 descendants by associating them with the 12 constellations of the zodiac. The Psalms and the Book of Job refer repeatedly to celestial phenomena, the zodiacal constellations, and other star groups such as the Pleiades. Knowledge of the zodiac, the scientific division of the heavens, and other astronomical information was thus prevalent in the ancient Near East well before the days of ancient Greece. The scope of Mesopotamian astronomy on which the early Greek astronomers drew must have been vast, for even what archaeologists have found amounts to an avalanche of texts, inscriptions, seal impressions, reliefs, drawings, lists of celestial bodies, omens, calendars, tables of rising and setting times of the sun and the planets, forecasts of eclipses. Many such later texts were, to be sure, more astrological than astronomical in nature. The heavens and the movements of the heavenly bodies appear to be a prime preoccupation of mighty kings, temple priests, and the people in the land in general. The purpose of the stargazing seemed to be to find in the heavens an answer to the course of affairs on earth: war, peace, abundance, famine. Compiling and analyzing hundreds of texts from the first millennium BC, R.C. Thompson, The Reports of the Magicians and Astrologers of Nineveh and Babylon, a book title I assume, was able to show that these stargazers were concerned with the fortunes of the land, its people, and its rulers from a national point of view, and not with individual fortunes as present-day horoscopic astrology is. Quote, "When the moon in its calculated time is not seen, there will be an invasion of a mighty city. When a comet reaches the path of the sun, field flow will be diminished. An uproar will happen twice. When Jupiter goes with Venus, the prayers of the land will reach the heart of the gods. If the sun stands in the station of the moon, the king of the land will be secure on the throne." End quote. Even this astrology required comprehensive and accurate astronomical knowledge, without which no omens were possible. The Mesopotamians, possessing such knowledge, distinguished between the fixed stars and the planets that wandered about, and knew that the sun and the moon were neither fixed stars nor ordinary planets. They were familiar with comets, meteors, and other celestial phenomena, and could calculate the relationships between the movements of the sun, moon, and earth, and predict eclipses. They followed the motions of the celestial bodies and related them to Earth's orbit and rotation through the heliacal system, the system still in use today, which measures the rising and setting of stars and planets in Earth's skies relative to the sun. To keep track of the movements of the celestial bodies and their positions in the heavens relative to Earth and to one another, the Babylonians and Assyrians kept accurate ephemerides. I'm not familiar with that term. Ephemerides. Ephemerides? I don't know. There were tables that listed and depicted. These were start over. These were tables that listed and predicted the future position of the celestial bodies. Professor George Sarton, in Chaldean astronomy of the last 3 centuries BC, found that they were computed by 2 methods, a later one used in Babylon and an older one from Uruk. His unexpected finding was that the older Uruk method was more sophisticated and more accurate than the later system. He accounted for this surprising situation by concluding that the erroneous astronomical notions of the Greeks and Romans resulted from a shift to the philosophy that explained the world in geometric terms, while the astronomer priests of Chaldea followed the prescribed formulas and traditions of Sumer. The unearthing of the Mesopotamian civilizations in the past 100 years leaves no doubt that in the field of astronomy, as in so many others, the roots of our knowledge lie deep in Mesopotamia. In this field, too, we draw upon and continue the heritage of Sumer. Sarton's conclusions have been reinforced by very comprehensive studies by Professor O. Neugebauer in Astronomical Cuneiform Texts, which was astonished to find that the ephemerides, precise as they were not based on observation by the Babylonian astronomers who prepared them. Instead, they were calculated, quote, from some fixed arithmetic. Why can't I say that? Arithmetical schemes, which were given and were not to be interfered with, end quote, by the astronomers who used them. Wow, I don't know why I'm having trouble tonight. Sorry. Such automatic adherence to arithmetical schemes was achieved with the aid of procedure texts that accompanied the ephemerides, which, quote, gave the rules for computing ephemerides step by step, end quote, according to some, quote unquote, strict mathematical theory. Neugebauer concluded that the Babylonian astronomers were ignorant of the theories on which the ephemerides and their mathematical calculations were based. He also admitted that, quote, the empirical and theoretical foundation, end quote, of these accurate tables to a large extent escaped modern scholars as well. Yet he is convinced that ancient astronomical theories, quote, must have existed because it is impossible to devise computational schemes of high complication without a very elaborate plan, end quote. Professor Alfred Jeremias, in Handbuch der Altorientalischen Geistkultur, concluded that the Mesopotamian astronomers were acquainted with the phenomena of retrograde, the apparent erratic and snake-like course of the planets as seen from Earth, caused by the fact that Earth orbits the Sun either faster or slower than the other planets. The significance of such knowledge lies not only in the fact that retrograde is a phenomenon related to orbits around the Sun, but also in the fact that very long periods of observation were required to grasp and track it. Where were these complicated theories developed, and who made the observations without which they could not have been developed? Neugebauer pointed out that, quote, in the procedure texts we meet a great number of technical terms of wholly unknown reading, if not unknown meaning, end quote. Someone much earlier than the Babylonians possessed astronomical and mathematical knowledge far superior to that of later culture in Babylon, Assyria, Egypt, Greece, and Rome. The Babylonians and Assyrians devoted a substantial part of their astronomical efforts to keeping an accurate calendar. Like the Jewish calendar, to this very day, it was a solar-lunar calendar, correlating or intercalating, the solar year of just over 365 days with a lunar month of just under 30 days. While a calendar was important for business and other mundane needs, its accuracy was required primarily to determine the precise day and moment of the new year and other festivals and worship of the gods. To measure or correlate the intricate movements of the sun, earth, moon, and planets, the Mesopotamian astronomer priests relied on a complex spherical astronomy. Earth was taken to be a sphere with an equator and poles. The heavens, too, were divided by imaginary equatorial and polar lines. The passage of celestial bodies was related to the ecliptic, the projection of the planes of Earth's orbit around the sun upon the celestial sphere. The equinoxes, the points and the times at which the sun, in its apparent annual movement north and south, crosses the celestial equator, and the solstices, the time when the sun, during its apparent annual movement along the ecliptic, is at its greatest declination, north or south. All these astronomical concepts used to this very day. All these are astronomical concepts. But the Babylonians and Assyrians did not invent the calendar or the ingenious methods for its calculation. Their calendars, as well as our own, originated in Sumer, where the scholars have found a calendar in use from the very earliest times, that is, the basis for all later calendars. The principal calendar and model was the calendar of Nippur, the seat and center of Enlil. Our present-day one is modeled on the Nippurian calendar. The Sumerians considered the new year to begin at the exact moment when the sun crossed the spring equinox. Professor Stephen Langdon, tablets from the archives of Drahem, found that records left by Dungi, a ruler of Ur circa 2400 BC, showed that the Nippurian calendar selected a certain celestial body by whose setting against the sunset it was possible to determine the exact moment of the new year's arrival. This, he concluded, was done perhaps 2,000 years before the era of Dungi, that is, circa 4400 BC. Can it really be that the Sumerians, without actual instruments, nevertheless had the sophisticated astronomical and mathematical know-how required by spherical astronomy and geometry? Indeed, they had, as their language shows. They had a term, dub. That meant, in astronomy, the 360-degree quote-unquote circumference of the world, in relation to which they spoke of the curvature or arc of the heavens. For their astronomical and mathematical calculations, they drew the An-Ur, an imagined heavenly horizon against which they could measure the rising and setting of celestial bodies. Perpendicular to this horizon, they extended an imagined vertical line, the Nubusarda. With its aid, they obtained the zenith point and called it the Anpa. They traced the lines we call meridians and called them the graded yokes. Latitude lines were called middle lines of heaven. The latitude line marking the summer solstice, for example, was called Anbil, fiery point of the heavens. The Akkadian, Hurrian, Hittite, and other literary masterpieces of the ancient Near East, being translations of versions of Sumerian originals, were replete with Sumerian loanwords pertaining to celestial bodies and phenomena. But Babylonian and Assyrian scholars who drew up star lists or wrote down calculations of planetary movements often noted the Sumerian or originals on the tablets that they were copying or translating. The 25,000 texts devoted to astronomy and astrology said to have been included in the Nineveh library of the Ashurbanipal frequently bore acknowledgments of Sumerian origins. Pause. A major astronomical series that the Babylonians called the Day of the Lord was declared by its scribes to have been copied from a Sumerian tablet written in the time of Sargon of Akkad in the 3rd millennium BC. A tablet dated to the 3rd dynasty of Ur, also in the 3rd millennium BC, describes and lists a series of celestial bodies so clearly that modern scholars had little difficulty in recognizing the text as a classification of constellations, among them Ursa Major, Draco, Lyra, Cygnus, and Cepheus, and Triangulum in the northern skies, Orion, Canis Major, Hydra, Corvus, and Centaurus in the southern skies, and the familiar zodiacal constellations in the central celestial band. In ancient Mesopotamia, the secrets of celestial knowledge were guarded, studied, and transmitted by astronomer priests. It was thus perhaps fitting that 3 scholars who are credited with giving back to us this lost Chaldean science were Jesuit priests, Joseph Epping, Johann Strassmann, and Franz X. Kugler. Kugler, in a masterwork, Sternkunde und Sterndienst in Babel, and analyzed, deciphered, sorted out, and explained a vast number of texts and lists. In one instance, by mathematically, quote, turning the skies backwards, end quote, he was able to show that a list of 33 celestial bodies in the Babylonian skies of 1800 BC was neatly arranged according to present-day groupings. After much work deciding which are true groups and which are merely subgroups, the world's astronomical community agreed in 1925 to divide the heavens as seen from Earth into 3 regions, northern, central, and southern, and group the stars therein into 88 constellations. As it turned out, there was nothing new in this arrangement, for the Sumerians were the first to divide the heavens into 3 bands or ways. The northern way was named after Enlil, the southern after Ea, and the central band was the way of Ami. And to assign to them various constellations. The present-day central band, the band of the 12 constellations of the zodiac, corresponds exactly to the way of Anu, in which the Sumerians grouped the stars into 12 houses. In antiquity, as today, the phenomena was related to the concept of the zodiac. The great circle of Earth around the Sun was divided into 12 equal parts of 30 degrees each. The stars seen in each of these segments or houses were grouped together into a constellation, each of which was then named according to the shape the stars of the group seemed to form. Because the constellations and their subdivisions, and even individual stars within the constellations, have reached Western civilization with names and descriptions borrowed heavily from Greek mythology, the Western world tended for nearly 2 millennia to credit the Greeks with this achievement, but it is now apparent that the early Greek astronomers merely adopted into their language and mythology a ready-made astronomy obtained from the Sumerians. We have already noted that Hipparchus, Eudoxus, and others obtained we have already noted how they obtained their knowledge. Even Thales, the earliest Greek astronomer of consequence, who is said to have predicted the total solar eclipse of May 28, 585 BC, which stopped the war between the Lydians and the Medians, allowed that the sources of his knowledge were of pre-Semitic Mesopotamian origins, namely Sumerian. We have acquired the name zodiac from the Greek zodiakos kyklos, animal circle, because the layout of the star groups was likened to the shape of a lion, fishes, and so on. But those imaginary shapes and names were actually originated by the Sumerians, who called the 12 zodiacal constellations Ulhe, shiny herd. And then he has them listed here. I'll read them off. 1. Gu'anna, heavenly bull, Taurus. Mashtabba, twins, our Gemini. Dub, pinchers or tongs, the crab or Cancer. Urgula, lion, which we call Leo. Absin, her father was Sin, the maiden, Virgo. Ziba'anna, and these are all, the reason I'm reading them that way is that each syllable is separated by a period. So I'm reading them, that's why I'm reading them that way, in case you were wondering. Ziba'anna, heavenly fate, the scales of Libra. Gir Tab, which claws and cuts, Scorpio. Pa Bil, defender, the archer, Sagittarius. Suhur Mash, goatfish, Capricorn. Gu, lord of the waters, the water bearer, Aquarius. Sim Ma, fishes, Pisces. Ku Mal, field dweller, the ram, Aries. The pictorial representation or signs of the zodiac, like their names, have remained virtually intact since their introduction in Sumer. Come on, there we go. Didn't want to change. Until the introduction of the telescope, European astronomers accepted the Ptolemaic recognition of only 19 constellations in the northern skies. And we actually have a picture here that shows Girtab Scorpio, Absin Virgo, and Suhurmash Capricornio. So I'll show you that really quick. And there you go. Scorpio, Virgo, Capricornio. In 1925, when the current classification was agreed upon, 28 constellations had been recognized in what the Sumerians called the Way of Enlil. We should no longer be surprised to find out that unlike Ptolemy, the earlier Sumerians recognized, identified, grouped, named, and listed all the constellations of the northern skies. Of the celestial bodies in the Way of Enlil, 12 were deemed to be of Enlil, paralleling the 12 zodiacal celestial bodies in the Way of Anu. Likewise, in the southern portion of the skies, the Way of Ea, 12 constellations were listed, not merely as present in the southern skies, but as of the god Ea. In addition to these 12 principal constellations of Ea, several others were listed for the southern skies, though not so many as are recognized today. The Way of Ea posed serious problems to the Assyriologists, who undertook the immense task of unraveling the ancient astronomical knowledge, not only in terms of modern knowledge, but also based on what the skies should have looked like centuries and millennia ago. Observing the southern skies from Ur or Babylon, the Mesopotamian astronomers could see only a little more than halfway into the southern skies. The rest was already below the horizon. Yet, if correctly identified, some of the constellations of the Way of Ea lay well beyond the horizon. But there was an even greater problem. If, as the scholars assumed, the Mesopotamians believed, as the Greeks did in later times, that the earth was a mass of dry land resting upon the chaotic darkness of a netherworld, the Greek Hades, a flat disk over which the heavens arched in a semicircle, then there should have been no southern skies at all. Restricted by the assumption that the Mesopotamians were beholden to a flat earth concept, modern scholars could not permit their conclusions to take them too much below the equatorial line dividing north and south. The evidence, however, shows that the three Sumerian ways encompassed the complete skies of a global, not flat earth. In 1900, T.G. Pinches reported to the Royal Asiatic Society that he was able to reassemble and reconstruct a complete Mesopotamian astrolabe, literally taker of stars. He showed it to be a circular disk, divided like a pie into 12 segments and 3 concentric rings, resulting in a field of 36 portions. The whole design had the appearance of a rosette of 12 leaves, each of which had the name of a month written in it. Pinches marked them 1 to 12 in Roman numerals, by the way, for convenience, starting with Nisanu, the first month of the Mesopotamian calendar. And we have a picture of that. I am going to bring it up, and then I should be able to actually click on it and bring it up for you. So it's a little bit more readable. So here's Nisanu Mul-Iku. I don't know for certain what the 320 means. Is that because I don't know. Maybe he'll explain it. Malaru or Alaru Mulmul, and so on, all the way around. I'll give you a minute to look that over. You can always look this up online. I'm sure it's available. Or if you want to, you can go to my YouTube channel here in roughly a week, and this will be up, and you can take a screenshot. I suppose you could take a screenshot right now if you want. If you really want to study this, I'll give you a second to do exactly that. Maybe you already thought of it before I even mentioned it. All right. So it's interesting. There are the 3 rings. What do these inside ones say? I'm going to bring it up a little bit more. So Mul-Iku, Mul-Dilpat, and Mulapin, all in one section. I'm just noting that. It's interesting. So, anyway, there we are. Let's move on. Each of the 36 portions also contained a name with a small circle below it, signifying that it was the name of a celestial body. The names have since been found in many texts and star lists and are undoubtedly the names of constellations, stars, or planets. Each of the 36 segments also had a number written below the name of the celestial body. In the innermost ring, the numbers ranged from 30 to 60. In the central ring, from 60, written as 1, to 120. This 2 is the sexagesimal system, meant 2 times 60 equals 120. And in the outermost ring, from 120 to 240. What did these numbers represent? Just what I was asking, huh? Writing nearly 50 years after the presentation by Pinches, the astronomer and Assyriologist O. Neugebauer, A History of Ancient Astronomy, Problems and Methods, could only say that, quote, the whole text constitutes some kind of schematic celestial map. In each of the 36 fields, we find the name of a constellation and simple numbers whose significance is not yet clear. End quote. A leading expert on the subject, B. L. van der Waarden, Babylonian Astronomy, the 36 Stars, reflecting on the apparent rise and fall of the numbers in some rhythm, could only suggest that, quote, the numbers have something to do with the duration of daylight, end quote. The puzzle can be solved, we believe, only if one discards the notion that the Mesopotamians believed in a flat earth, and recognizes that their astronomical knowledge was as good as ours, not because they had better instruments than we do, but because their source of information was the Nephilim. We suggest that the enigmatic numbers represent degrees of the celestial arc, with the North Pole as the starting point, and that the astrolabe was a planisphere, the representation of a sphere upon a flat surface, or planisphere. I don't know. While the numbers increase and decrease, those in the opposite segments for the way of Enlil, such as Nisanu 50, Tashritu 40, add up to 90. All those what? There's a quote without an ending quote. So I'm not sure which way that's supposed to be going. So anyway, add up to 90. All those for the way of Anu add up to 180, and all of those for the way of Ea add up to 360, such as Nisanu 200, Tashritu 160. These figures are too familiar to be misunderstood. They represent segments of a complete spherical circumference, a quarter of the way, 90 degrees, halfway, 180 degrees, or full circle, 360 degrees. The numbers given for the way of Enlil are so paired as to show that this Sumerian segment of the northern skies stretched over 60 degrees from the North Pole, bordering on the way of Anu at 30 degrees above the equator. The way of Anu was equidistant on both sides of the equator, reaching to 30 degrees south below the equator. Then farther south, the farthest away from the North Pole, lay the way of Ea, that part of Earth and of the celestial globe that lay between 30 degrees south and the South Pole. Interesting. Okay. And okay, I'm going to read this real quick and then I'll show you this picture. The numbers in the way of Ea segments adds up to 180 degrees in Adaru, February through March, and Ululu, August and September. The only point that is 180 degrees away from the North Pole, whether you go south on the east or on the west, is the South Pole. Okay. And this can hold true only if one deals with a sphere. All right, let me show you this picture. There's actually another picture, but we'll read about it first. So here we go. This is the picture he's got. Oh, and the text disappeared, though. So we see the three, well, there's the equator and Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. So he's saying here so the band here is the way of Anu, the celestial band of the sun, planets, and the constellations of the zodiac. B is the way of Enlil, the northern skies, and C is the way of Ea, the southern skies. Interesting that they don't actually match up with the equator, which is, in my mind, that's how I was picturing them. Okay. Precession is the phenomenon caused by the wobble of Earth's north-south axis, causing the North Pole, the one point at the North Star, the one pointing at the North Star, and the South Pole to trace a grand circle in the heavens. The apparent retardation of Earth against the starry constellations amounts to about 50 seconds of an arc in 1 year, or 1 degree in 72 years. The grand circle, the time it takes the Earth's North Pole to point again at the same North Star, therefore, lasts 25,920 years, 72 times 360. And that is what the astronomers call the Great Year, or the Platonian year, for apparently Plato, or I guess that would be Platonian. I said Platonian. For apparently Plato, too, was aware of the phenomenon. I think Plato was aware of a lot of stuff. The rising and setting of various stars deemed significant in antiquity, and the precise determination of the spring equinox, which ushered in the new year, were related to the zodiacal house in which they occurred. Due to the precession, the spring equinox and the other celestial phenomena being retarded from year to year were finally retarded once in 2,160 years by a full zodiacal house. Our astronomers continue to employ a 0 point, the first point of Aries, which marked the spring equinox circa 900 BC, but this point has by now shifted well into the house of Pisces. Circa AD 2100, the spring equinox will begin to occur in the preceding house of Aquarius. This is what is meant by those who say that we are about to enter the age of Aquarius. Interesting. I've read a lot of references to the age of Aquarius. Songs that came out that mentioned the age of Aquarius. Well, there is a song called The Age of Aquarius, I think, that's like a 70s song. And he was writing this in the 70s, so it's kind of interesting. All right. And the second picture shows the zodiac. Okay, in relation to the Earth's wobble, I guess. All right, well, I'll just let you look at it and see what you think about it. I'll have to study this picture for a while to... So, Equinoccio de Otoño is this top one here. Tropico de Cáncer, Ecuador, Tropico de Capricornio, Solsticio de Verano, Equinoccio de Primavera. Interesting. So this is a full cycle then, starting in 2100 DC, going all the way around. No, going around. No. How is that? It's going around this way. Yeah, 60. I don't know. I don't know what the 2100 DC is, but AC 60. AC. Oh, okay. So starting in 2100 DC, then the next one, it goes from Pisces and switches to Aries in 60 AC. Then in 2220 AC, it changes to Taurus, and so on around to 23,820 AC, which I'm assuming is the equivalent of AC or AD and BC. So 2100. Oh no, 2100 he said 2100. I'm sorry, I'm being kind of stupid tonight. 2100 AD, he said, is that when we enter the age of Aquarius. That is here. So then what's... Oh, so I was going backwards, was I? I guess I'm not gonna sit here and waste your time while I try to wrap my brain around that. Let's just move on. I'm just being a little dense on what he's trying to represent there. Because the shift from one zodiacal house to another takes more than 2 millennia, scholars wondered how and where Hipparchus could have learned the precession of this in the 2nd century BC. It is now clear that his source was Sumerian. Professor Langdon's findings reveal that the Nippurian calendar, established circa 4400 BC in the age of Taurus. Okay, so we are going that way. Oh, now I understand it. Okay. Reflect knowledge of the precession and the shift of zodiacal houses that took place 2160 years earlier than that. So I can redeem myself a little bit. It is going this direction. So Taurus 4380, but he said 4400, close enough. Moving this way. So when we reach Aquarius, it'll be 2100 roughly. Okay, now I get it. Okay. Professor Jeremias, who correlated Mesopotamia, who correlated Mesopotamia with 2 exclamation points. What the hell that's supposed to mean? I don't know. Astronomical text with Hittite astronomical texts. Maybe it's just a typo. Was also of the opinion that older astronomical tablets recorded the change from Taurus to Aries, and he concluded that the Mesopotamian astronomers predicted and anticipated the shift from Aries to Pisces. Subscribing to these conclusions, Professor Willie Hartner, the earliest history of the constellations in the Near East, suggests that the Sumerians left behind plentiful pictorial evidence to that effect. When the spring equinox was in the zodiac of Taurus, the summer solstice occurred in the zodiac of Leo. Hartner drew attention to the recurrent motif of a bull-lion combat appearing in Sumerian depictions from earliest times, and suggests that these motifs represented the key positions of the constellations of Taurus the bull and Leo the lion to an observer at 30 degrees north, such as at Ur, circa 4000 BC. And that is right here. And then we've got the cross there, which is interesting. I don't know. I wonder if he'll mention that. Most scholars considered the Sumerian stress of Taurus as their first constellation as evidence not only of the antiquity of the zodiac, dating to circa 4000 BC, but also as testifying to the time when Sumerian civilization so suddenly began. Professor Jeremias, in the Old Testament in the Light of the Ancient East, found evidence showing that the Sumerian zodiacal chronological point 0 stood precisely between the bull and the twins. From this and other data, he concluded that the zodiac was devised in the age of Gemini, the twins, that is, even before Sumerian civilization began. A Sumerian tablet in the Berlin Museum, VAT .7847, I suppose is the catalog number for it, begins the list of zodiacal constellations with that of Leo, taking us back to circa 11,000 BC when man had just begun to till the land. And now we know that that's not totally true, because about 11,500 years ago is when the end of the Younger Dryas, or was the end of the Younger Dryas, which you can look that up if you want to. I won't really get into it because I don't want to say something incorrect there and misinform you. But I believe it's around 11,500 years ago that it's the end of the Younger Dryas. Professor H.V. Hilleprecht, in the Babylonian expedition of the University of Pennsylvania, went even further. Studying thousands of tablets bearing mathematical tabulations, he concluded that, quote, all the manipulation and division tables from the temple libraries of Nippur and Sippar and from the library of Ashurbanipal in Nineveh are based upon the number 12,960,000, end quote. Analyzing this number and its significance, he concluded that it could be related only to the phenomenon of the precession, and that the Sumerians knew of the great year of 25,920 years. This is indeed fantastic astronomical sophistication at an impossible time. Just as it is evident that the Sumerian astronomers possessed knowledge that they could not possibly have acquired on their own, so is there evidence to show that a good deal of their knowledge was of no practical use to them. This pertains not only to the very sophisticated astronomical methods that were used, who in ancient Sumer really needed to establish a celestial equator, for example, but also to a variety of elaborate texts that dealt with the measurements of distances between stars. One of these texts, known as AO.6478, lists the 26 major stars visible along the line we now call the Tropic of Cancer, and gives distances between them as measured in three different ways. The text first gives the distance between these stars by a unit called mana shukultu, measured and weighed. It is believed that this was an ingenious device that related the weight of escaping water to the passage of time. It made possible the determination of distances between two stars in terms of time. The second column of distances was in terms of degrees of the arc of the skies. The full day, daylight and nighttime, was divided into 12 double hours. The arc of the heavens comprised a full circle of 360 degrees. Hence, one beru, or double hour, represented 30 degrees of the arc of the heavens. By this method, passage of time on earth provided a measure of the distances in degrees between the named celestial bodies. The third method of measurement was beru ina shame, length in the skies. F. Thorodangin in distances entre étoiles fixes. I don't know. Pointed out that while the first two methods were relative to other phenomena, this third method provided absolute measurements. A celestial bent, he and his and others believe, was equivalent to 10,692 of our present day meters, 11,693 yards. Okay, real quick. I want to see how much farther we've got. Okay, we're very close to being done. I've got about 5 pages to go. The distance in the skies between the 26 stars was calculated in the text as adding up to 655,200 beru drawn in the skies, quote unquote. The availability of 3 different methods of measuring distances between stars conveys the great importance attached to the matter. Yet, who among the men and women of Sumer needed such knowledge, and who among them could devise the methods and accurately use them? The only possible answer is the Nephilim had the knowledge and the need for such accurate measurements. Capable of space travel, arriving on Earth from another planet, roaming Earth's skies, they were the only ones who could and did possess at the dawn of mankind's civilization the astronomical knowledge that required millennia to develop, the sophisticated methods and mathematics and concepts for an advanced astronomy, and the need to teach human scribes to copy and record meticulously table upon table of distances in the heavens, order of stars and groups of stars, heliacal risings and settings, a complex sun-moon-earth calendar, and the rest of the remarkable knowledge of both heaven and earth. Against this background, can it still be assumed that the Mesopotamian... Oh, I bet you that's supposed to be an N. It's 2 exclamation points again. The Mesopotamian astronomers, guided by the Nephilim, were not aware of the planets beyond Saturn, that they did not know of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Was their knowledge of Earth's own family, the solar system, less complete than that of distant stars, their order, and their distances? Astronomical information from ancient times contained in hundreds of related texts lists celestial bodies neatly arranged by their celestial order, or by the gods or the months or the lands or the constellations with which they were associated. One such text, analyzed by Ernst F. Weidmer, Handbuch der Babylonischen Astronomie, has come to be called the Great Star List. It listed in 5 columns tens of celestial bodies as related to one another, to months, countries, and deities. Another text listed correctly the main stars in the zodiacal constellations. A text indexed as B.M.86378 arranged in its unbroken part 71 celestial bodies by their location in the heavens, and so on and on and on. In efforts to make sense of this legion of text, and in particular to identify correctly the planets of our solar system, a succession of scholars came up with confusing results. As we now know, their efforts were doomed to failure because they incorrectly assumed that the Sumerians and their successors were unaware that the solar system was heliocentric, that Earth was but another planet, and that there were more planets beyond Saturn. Ignoring the possibility that some names in the star lists may have applied to Earth itself, and seeking to apply the great number of other names and epithets only to the 5 planets they believed were known to the Sumerians, scholars reached conflicting conclusions. Some scholars even suggested that the confusion was not theirs, but a Chaldean mix-up, or for some unknown reason, they said the Chaldeans had switched around the names of the 5 known planets. The Sumerians referred to all celestial bodies, planets, stars, or constellations, as Mul, which means who shine in the heights. The Akkadian term Kabab was likewise applied by the Babylonians and Assyrians as a general term for any celestial body. This practice further frustrated the scholars seeking to unravel the ancient astronomical texts, but some muls that were termed Lubad clearly designated planets of our solar system. Knowing that the Greek name for the planets was wanderers, the scholars have read Lubad as wandering sheep, deriving from Lu, those which are shepherded, and Bad, high and afar. But now that we have shown that the Sumerians were fully aware of the true nature of the solar system, the other meanings of the term Bad, the olden, the foundation, the one where death is, assume direct significance. These are appropriate epithets for the sun, and it follows that by Lubad the Sumerians meant not mere wandering sheep, but sheep shepherded by the sun, the planets of our sun. The location and relation of the Lubad to each other and to the sun were described in many Mesopotamian astronomical texts. there were references to those planets that are above and those that are below, and Kugler correctly guessed that the reference point was Earth itself. But mostly the planets were spoken of in the framework of astronomical texts dealing with mulmul, a term that kept the scholars guessing. In the absence of a better solution, most scholars have agreed that the term mulmul stood for the Pleiades, a cluster of stars in the zodiacal constellation of Taurus, and the one through which the axis of the spring equinox passed, as viewed from Babylon circa 2200 BC. Mesopotamian texts often indicated that the mulmul included 7 lumash, 7 wanderers that are familiar, and that the scholars assumed that these were the brightest members of the Pleiades, which can be seen with the naked eye. The fact that, depending on classification, the group was either 6 or 9 has either 6 or 9 such bright stars, and not 7, posed a problem, but it was brushed aside for lack of any better ideas as to the meaning of mulmul. Franz Kugler in Sternkunde und Sterndienst in Babel reluctantly accepted the Pleiades as the solution, but expressed his astonishment when he found it stated unambiguously in Mesopotamian texts that mulmul included not only wanderers, planets, but also the sun and the moon, making it impossible to retain the Pleiades idea. He also came upon texts that clearly stated that mulmul ulshu, 12, mulmul is a band of 12, of which 10 formed a distinct group. He suggested that the term mulmul referred to the solar system, using the repetitive mulmul to indicate the group as a whole, as, quote, the celestial body comprising all celestial bodies, end quote. Charles Furloyd in L'Astrologie Chaldeenne transliterated a Mesopotamian text K.3558 that describes the members of the mulmul or Kakabu group. The text's last line is explicit. Quote, Akabu Kakabu. The number of its celestial bodies is 12. The stations of its celestial bodies 12. The complete months of the moon is 12. End quote. The texts leave no doubt the mulmul, our solar system, was made up of 12 members. Perhaps this should not come as a surprise, for the Greek scholar Diodorus, explaining the 3, quote, ways, end quote, of the Chaldeans and of the consequent listing of 36 celestial bodies, stated that, quote, of those celestial gods, 12 hold chief authority. To each of these, the Chaldeans assign a month and a sign of the zodiac, end quote. Ernst Weidner in Der Tierkreis und die Wege am Himmel reported that in addition to the Way of Anu and its 12 zodiac constellations, some texts also refer to the Way of the Sun, which was also made up of 12 celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, and 10 others. Line 20 of the so-called Te tablet stated, quote, Nafar 12 Shermesh Halasha Kabablu Shah Sin u Shamash ina Libi Itiku. Okay, he really didn't need to do that. Which means, all in all, this is a quote, all in all, 12 members where the moon and sun belong. Where the sun and moon belong, where the planets orbit. End quote. We can now grasp the significance of the number 12 in the ancient world. The great circle of Sumerian gods and of all Olympian gods thereafter comprised exactly 12. Younger gods could join this circle only if older gods retired. Likewise, a vacancy had to be filled to retain the divine number 12. The principal celestial circle, the way of the sun with its 12 numbers, set the pattern, according to which each other celestial band was divided into 12 segments, or was allocated 12 principal celestial bodies. Accordingly, there were 12 months in a year, 12 double hours in a day. Each division of Sumer was assigned 12 celestial bodies as a measure of good luck. Many studies, such as the one by S. Langdon in Babylonian Menologies and the Semitic Calendar, show that the division of the year into 12 months was, from its very beginnings, related to the 12 great gods. Almost there, guys. Fritz Hommel in Die Astronomie der Alien Chalder and others after him have shown that the 12 months were closely connected with the 12 zodiacs and that both derived from 12 principal celestial bodies. Charles F. Jean in Lexicologie Sumérienne reproduced a Sumerian list of 24 celestial bodies that paired 12 zodiacal constellations with 12 members of our solar system. In a long text identified by F. Thoreau Dengen in Rituals Akkadian as a temple program for the New Year festival in Babylon, the evidence for the consecration of 12 as the central celestial phenomena is persuasive. The great temple, the Esagila, had 12 gates. Wow. The powers of all the celestial gods were vested in Marduk by reciting 12 times the pronouncement, quote, "My Lord, is he not my Lord?" End quote. The mercy of the god was then invoked 12 times, and that of his spouse 12 times. The total of 24 was then matched with the 12 zodiacal constellations and 12 members of the solar system. A boundary stone carved with the symbols of the celestial bodies by a king of Susa depicts those 24 signs, the familiar 12 signs of the zodiac, and symbols that stand for the 12 members of the solar system. These were the 12 astral gods of Mesopotamia, as well as of the Hurrian, Hittite, Greek, and all other ancient pantheons. Although our natural counting base is the number 10, the number 12 permeated all matters celestial and divine long after the Sumerians were gone. Okay, I'm going to show you this last picture, and then I'll finish this last little bit of text. So here we go. I didn't know I could do this earlier. I would have been doing it every time. So we have... this looks to me like, okay, there's a sheep, a ram, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Depending on how you count them, 12 animals. So, yeah. Anyway, back to it. Let's finish this. This is the end of the chapter. There were 12 Greek titans, 12 tribes of Israel, 12 parts of the magical breastplate of the Israelite high priest. The power of this celestial 12 carried over to the 12 apostles of Jesus, and even in our own decimal system we count from 1 to 12, and only after 12 do we return to 10 and 3, 10 and 4, and so on. Where did this powerful, decisive number 12 stem from? From the heavens. For the solar system, the Mulmul included, in addition to all the planets known to us, also the planet of Anu, the one whose symbol, a radiant celestial body, stood in the Sumerian writing for the god Anu and for divine. Quote, "The kebab of the supreme scepter is one of the sheep in Mulmul, end quote, explained in astronomical text. And when Marduk usurped the supremacy and replaced Anu as the god associated with this planet, the Babylonians said, quote, the planet of Marduk within Mulmul appears, end quote. Teaching humanity the true nature of earth and the heavens, the Nephilim informed the ancient astronomer priests not only of the planets beyond Saturn, but also of the existence of the most important planet, the one from which they came, the 12th planet. And that is the end of this chapter. And then the next is the Epic of Creation, and that looks, I'm just flipping ahead a little bit. Some of the pictures are pretty interesting. It's going to be a good chapter. This whole book has been a good read, whether you believe it or not. It's just been interesting. So, anyway, let us go and see who might be about. And let's see, Zeus is playing Sea of Thieves. Mr. Blitzer is playing The Outer Worlds. We've got Ren Flames and Alyosha playing Fortnite, and Mikachu playing Dead by Daylight. I said the next time I went to go to Ren Flames, I was actually going to go to Alyosha instead, because they always play together, and I generally raid him and not her. So I'm going to raid her. She's got one viewer right now. So hang with me just a minute, and we'll head on over there, and I'll see you there in a minute.
What is that? Instead of... Oh, I just